Anyway, welcome to my staff meeting, computing, this Wednesday. What are we going to do today? Look at three main aspects. Firstly is computing at Haddon. We're going to have a very brief look at our Jelly Baby and intent for the computing curriculum. Then we're going to look at the curriculum itself using progression maps, Purple Mash, very briefly. And finally looking at some new laptops that we've got. Looking at logins, the Office suite, and typing. It's going to be a blast. Right, the Jelly Baby. So this is a really simplified version. I've just taken four main aspects I think would be good to focus on today. So I think by the end of their time at Haddon, all our pupils should be curious, ready to explore, and willing to experiment. What I mean by that is the way certainly I learned to use a computer, and I'm sure most of us have, is trying things out by pressing buttons to see what they do. But nowadays I think kids aren't so keen on that. They wait to be told. So I'd like to change that as far as possible. Secondly, to be real world ready. I'll talk about that a bit more later on, but being able to use computers in the real world is what I mean. Fourthly, to be digitally safe. Obviously that's your e-safety. And finally, the thing that kind of brings it all together, being digitally literate. All that ties in with our intent. I'll talk about it in just a minute. I'll leave you to read this by yourself. Pause the video if you want to. But I want to draw out a few main kind of foci over here. So firstly, the intent, I think, for our pupils is to be able, at the end of their time here, to participate effectively and safely in an increasingly digital world. Things have changed so much since I was 8 and 9, it's quite a long time ago, and will continue to do so. So I think our children need to be prepared for that, really. They need to be able to understand and change the world. I think that's a goal for everyone, really, in education. But to use the computing that they take from here and on in their lives. Next, I'd like them to develop conversational thinking and creativity, obviously, and to become digitally literate citizens so that they can work in the future workplace, so they don't get left behind. I think those are all strong things to work towards. Okay, so before I carry on, what I did was I had a look at some stuff online. These are comments from secondary school teachers who are asked the question, what does good computing look like in your primary school? What do secondary school teachers want from primary schools? Some of these comments are quite interesting, so I'll bring those up. So this is a secondary teacher who says that things make her year 7s cry, literally cry. Things like using a mouse, clicking buttons on a mouse, knowing the difference between left and right, navigating using a mouse. It's clear, obviously, that nowadays most children, their first exposure to computing is through tablets and phones and things like that, which are fantastic. But when you come to that real world readiness, they don't know how to use a mouse, don't know how to log on with the username and a password, and crucially, taking responsibility for not losing it within 5 minutes. I think we're getting onto that quite well with our Timescale Rockstars, Purple Mash logins and things like that. But we still have some work to do. Things like using a keyboard like the Shift key, or saving files, opening files, all things that are quite tricky to do using tablets. Another one, it's slightly obscured. This person said a skill of being able to recognize similar features across multiple programs. Sadly, she had a boy sobbing with tears because he knew how to find bold in PowerPoint, but he couldn't understand how he was supposed to find bold in Word. Something about saving programs in the same place. This person said just using appropriate programs to do a task. And another one I thought was quite interesting, finding appropriate sources. Her secondary school children click on the first link, and even if it's an academic article meant for 40-year-olds with PhDs, they'll still try to torment themselves through it by, instead of scrolling down and skimming to find out what might be an appropriate website to find their answer. I know this from children in my class. They'll jump on the first link they find and not kind of consider its appropriateness for what they're trying to do. It's that real world readiness. Next one, obviously the year group login is one thing, have a read, but further down, the second paragraph, if you like, about online safety, kind of interesting. And finally, that third one at the bottom, teaching them how to type. I think this is so critical. Nina and I have been talking about this, and it's something we do need to focus on. Properly type with both hands, because they will spend magnitudes more time in their life typing on a computer than they will handwriting. Handwriting is important, typing is too, but we don't focus on that yet. Another person, this one we're kind of talking about the last sentence here. You have to teach all that stuff again. So teaching them how to log in, how to manage their files, how to use the shift key or caps lock, things like that, copying and pasting. It's just a kind of cry that what we're delivering from primary schools isn't really year 7 ready, and that means it's not real world ready. And the last one over here, oh my god, I literally cannot cope with children using caps lock to capitalize single letters. It actually makes me want to throw myself out of the window. There we go. So we need to change that, I think, and we're in a good place to do it. I'll explain why soon. Right, so very briefly, I'll go through the main strands of the computing curriculum in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. Some crossover, very similar. 6 of them in Key Stage 1. First is looking at algorithms, reasoning, creating programs, using technology. That does mean things like tablets, phones, laptops, but also things like cameras and recording devices, things like that. Using IT beyond school, and safe use, your e-safety. Key Stage 2, there's 7 strands there. So we've got networks, search engines, then reasoning again, creating programs, then developing those programs, using them, and of course e-safety again. So I'm going to give you a document later on to have a look at. This one, which is kind of like a summary created by Clive Davis. That's what he looks like. It says boss on his shirt because he is the boss. This is a nice summary showing what the strands are and how they should feed through. It's like your progression ladder through the year, what we're kind of working towards. Now, some time ago, actually quite a long time ago, at several of the computing networks, we took this document and kind of expanded it, flying hide it. Is that a word? No, it's not. And we turned it into this. So this is the second document I'd like to have a look at later on. And this is the Flying High Partnership Computing Progression Map. This is just for year 2, so there's one for each year group. And you'll notice that there are 6 columns. This is obviously Key Stage 1, and that means there are 6 strands. When you get to Key Stage 2, there's 7 strands. So computing science covers 3 of those. Information technology covers 1 of them in Key Stage 1. It splits into 2 for Key Stage 2. Digital literacy and obviously e-safety on the far right hand side. So those are your strands. Down the left hand side on this document, it's split, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail over here. So down the left hand side, you've got the National Curriculum Statement, for example, creating and debugging simple programs, kind of self-explanatory. Underneath that, you've got the outcome. So what will the children be able to do for that statement by the end of your year? Below that, you've got some unplugged guidance. A lady called Claire Board, who I don't think she was Flying High anymore. She used to run the networks, and she did a lot of kind of unplugged computing, so understanding the principles and methods of computing without using computers. Really interesting stuff. And what that section is on your progression document is kind of real world activities to embed understanding of the statement that you're working on, if that makes sense. So activities that you can do without using laptops, without using tablets, on the playground, in the classroom, etc. Really good stuff. Below that, you've got your Purple Mash links. So it's relevant Purple Mash units. I'll talk about that very quickly now. So Purple Mash, I think, is the core of our curriculum, and it covers a lot of what we need to do. It doesn't cover everything there, and that's where these are the unplugged guidance, and of course the next column, digital guidance outside of Purple Mash. So these are online resources to support the teaching of that particular national curriculum statement. And then below that one, you've got a mastery column, and that is kind of extending, going beyond. So for the super bright kids, the super interested kids, and ideally you'll be pushing as many as you can into the kind of mastery element. Okay, so some actions to do before we press on further. So at the end of this video, I'd like you to have a read through both the Clive Davis and the Flying High progression documents for your year group. Understand them, have a look at where your curriculum's going, and think about what you're doing, what you might need to add or change. And also have a look at the Purple Mash computing scheme work overview for your year group. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to get onto that now. Pause this video and I'll come back in a minute. So I've logged into Purple Mash. Yes, I've got 1,000 tabs open. Makes me happy. Finding the, I'm sure you know this, it's just kind of a reminder. Click on Teachers at the top. Then on the computing scheme of work, and obviously you can select your particular year group. Let's go to year 5. And then there's an overview document of the PDF that when you click on it will open and give you some guidance for what's going to happen in year 5. Okay, so as I said, once I've gone through this video, it's not much longer, don't worry. You'll have done both those things, or you'll get a chance to do those things as well. Are you ready to let the dogs out?
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Yeah, we've got some new laptops. Not like that, like that. So Mark, the IT guys, just about finished setting them up. They're pretty much ready to go. There are things to kind of work on, but the basics are in place. So I'll be issuing you with some new logins. Let's talk about that in just a second. Each pupil has been given a network account. Just like when you log onto your laptop, you need to use your username and your password. So each child in the school has been given one by Mark. I'll talk about that in a bit, actually. What these do, they let them log onto the laptops and they can save their work to their network. So going back to those real world skills, those issues that some of the secondary teachers are having, we can't really find a sensible or secure way to save things on the tablets. Purple Mash does have that facility, but it's not massively easy to use, and also doesn't apply to the real world. The way you save it in Purple Mash is not the way you save it in real life. But the laptops will let children do that. They go into the office next week and save their work, essentially. In time, these logins and network accounts will allow the use of Office 365, for example, email and Teams, if we need them. Purple Mash does have an email element, which gives a gist of email. It's not like a real-life experience, but we obviously have safety issues and things like that to consider if we are doing email, and that'll come in time. And finally, once the laptops are on the office, the laptops do have Office 2016, and I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Okay. So onto the usernames and passwords. This is how they're set up. So it takes the name and the surname, first 3 letters of the name, first 3 letters of the surname, and gives the username. When you come to log in, when the children come to log in, they don't need to worry about typing capitals. They'll come to you in the form of capitals in their case, but it doesn't really matter. Where it does matter is for the password there. With the password there, it's randomly generated, and it can't be changed. The children, the reason for that is I believe that the children don't kind of change a password, something that they can't remember, and then you're stuck waiting for someone to kind of change that. I won't be able to, and Mark, I don't think he can easily do it. I'm not too sure. So you get issued with a password. The other thing that's difficult, particularly for your younger children, so your Key Stage 1 or younger kids, the password looks like that. So it's 3 letters, 5 digits, and it has got some capitals. It's a secure password, it's a safe password, hard to crack, but also quite hard to remember. So I'd strongly recommend that you keep a copy of the passwords for yourself as well, in case the children lose theirs. Okay, so as I said, once they go onto the laptops, they'll have access to Microsoft Office Suite. Back to that real world readiness I keep banging on about. That's using things, for example, like Word, PowerPoint, and possibly Excel. I think maybe in sort of up Key Stage 2, it's definitely worth exploring using those. Now, how do we use them, or how do we teach the children to use them? If you're in Word, or PowerPoint or Excel, any of these, if you press the F1, the function key, function 1, top left of your keyboard, it'll bring up a help menu. It looks something like that for Word. Type in Word Training, click on Training, click on Word for Windows Training, or Excel, or whatever, and you'll get this. Now, Nina sent out a document just today, Tuesday, so yesterday, which kind of has a much quicker and easier way of finding that, but I'd already made this. I'm showing this to you as well, so 2 ways to find the same thing. But anyway, when you click on these links, it shows some really, really short and succinct, but very well presented videos, which kind of lays out the skills which would be useful for the children to have. I'll be honest, I don't have a kind of a curriculum laid out for using Microsoft Office yet. I think it's something that we'll need to think about, but it's definitely worth exploring. To me, the sooner the children start to use things like this and get familiar with it, the better, so that by the time they come to secondary school or the real world outside of school, they'll be experts in it. But we kind of need to think about how we're going to do that. Finally, typing. thinking back to what the secondary school teacher was saying, typing is a critical thing. As that one person said, we'll spend a lot more time typing than handwriting, most of us, and again, a skill that's good to kind of pick up sooner rather than later. So Nina's put me onto Dance Mat Typing. Type in Dance Mat Typing, this comes up. It's presented by a Welsh accented Tom Jones-like goat who guides the children through learning to type. It looks fantastic, it's really easy to use, and recommended. Okay, so further actions then. So these are the ones from before. So once this is finished in a minute or two, I'd like you to have a look at those documents like I said, and then down the line, give the student login details for the laptops and have a go at logging on, learning about how to use the laptop. It's not touch screen, it's all trackpad or keyboard. And finally, like I said, longer term, we need to look at those skills that Purple Mash doesn't teach. For example, Word, PowerPoint, typing, etc. Cheers.